Orochi loaded the mutilated body into a car and took to the highway. There were a few other civilian automobiles out and about so late at night. Squad cars passed by with no end in sight. Every single one of them drove by Oroshi's vehicle without stopping. Can't believe they were fooled by such a simple trick. Orochi had disguised the car as a taxi. Consequently, it attracted so little attention that he could have driven straight up to Imperial Palace where he's so bold. Orochi ultimately parked near Sakura Damon. Usually there were taxis constantly parked around here, in hopes of catching government employees on the way home from work. However, there was no one around in the dead of night, much to Oroshi's lack of surprise. He made preparations within the car before going outside and pulling something out of the back seat. Then, he retrieved the body from the trunk and crucified it to the object he'd brought out. Finally, he propped it against the edge of the canal and went back into the car. He left the object on such unsteady ground that it had likely fallen into the canal before long. I see. So he didn't drop it and then drive away. He propped it up so that eventually it would tip over, but by the time they actually found it, he'd be long gone. Clever girl. But according to his calculations, he'd be long gone by the time anyone heard it drop into the water. Oh, pointless. Even though she knew devising such an elaborate plan was completely meaningless. Ultimately, he'd done nothing more than fulfill his duty and a promise in his spare time. After all, his true objective was something else entirely. But he couldn't be rash or careless if he hoped to see it realized. No, first he had to confirm whether what he'd heard by chance in captivity was true, that there was indeed someone else out there now who carried her blood. Fuck. Okay, so he now has an interest in the girl. Of course he does. Okay, something new. Something's off. There was no one else in there but him. He hadn't let anyone else inside either. Yet when Yaginuma scanned the apartment, he noticed something was different. Okay, so this is gonna be when Yaginuma discovers his sister's head. Are we actually gonna see that bit play out? He almost drew his pistol, but quickly stopped himself. The apartment was devoid of life apart from him, that much he was certain of. But he needed to figure out what exactly felt so wrong about it. Yaginuma took another look around. First, he wondered if a burglar had snuck in while he'd been in the hospital. However, there was no signs that the place had been ransacked. Besides, he would have noticed that as soon as he'd returned were that the case. Uh-huh. Eventually, Yaginuma spotted small clumps of dirt on the floor. Crouched down and picked up one to find that it was a bit moist. Did this come from one of my plants? Yaginuma looked up at his potted plant stationed against the wall. Nothing seemed different from what he could tell, however. No. Wait. There was one more than there was supposed to have been. Oh, he only had 2 potted plants, but then he notices there's 3. A morning glory he didn't recognize was sitting amongst all the other plants. It was hidden behind the other pots, so he wouldn't have noticed it if he hadn't been looking hard enough. But why would there be an additional plant? Yaginuma moved to the other pot's side. For all he knew, this new one could have been a bomb in disguise. Well, it's some kind of bomb, that's for sure. Which meant it would have been dangerous to pluck out the plant itself. Thus, Yaginuma donned a pair of gloves, started gingerly sifting through the dirt, and found long strands of hair wrapped around his fingers soon after. Yaginuma unconsciously gasped. This was no bomb he was handling. He continued excavating through the dirt, hands shivering all the while. Before long, he'd uncovered clumps of hair. He dropped it, sending dirt and pieces of the pot scattering about. Along with a head. Or, more specifically, a severed head with roots sticking out of its hollowed eye sockets. Who in the world could have done this? No, first things first. Yaginuma checked the face, feebly resisting the urge to vomit. He recognized it, but of course he did. After all, eyes or no, there was no way he would ever mistake his sister's visage. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so now we got a new scene. After we've, pointed the finger at... Okay, this is Yaginuma's point of view. My father was with my sister. It was a sight I witnessed night after night. I just pretended to be asleep in the corner, wrestling back shivers and tears while waiting until it was finally over. Such is my life day after day after day after day. The floor creaked in concert with lamentful moans. She did nothing but lie back and let it happen. Her eyes were glazed over with resignation and defeat. Apart from an involuntary sigh every now and then, she didn't react no matter how hard she was rocked. God damn. And yet the man kept thrusting as if it was the only thing keeping him alive. Jesus. I didn't want to think of this person as our father. The austerity he displayed during the daytime was all but gone, replaced by pure lust that he took out in his own daughter. Back in those days, I didn't understand what the two of them were doing. However, I could tell that it was something beyond abnormal and perverse. How else could I explain the tears shining in her eyes? The door remained open, doing nothing to obstruct my view. As such, the repulsive spectacle was always in plain sight. Don't look. I could have sworn I saw my sister mouthing those words. Save me. She reached out to me as our father kept pounding away. Don't look. My sister shook her head. Save me. The futon was wet with her tears. Don't look. And yet, in spite of that, she smiled all the same. A faint, yet sickening creaking resounded. I woke up to the morning light streaming through the curtains. Though barely, I caught a whiff of a most unsettling scent. The birds outside shrieked their songs. A faint, yet sickening creaking resounded. There were no sounds apart from those. Insect corpses littering the floor, gentle sunlight. The birds shrieking. Shut up. A faint, yet sickening creaking resounded. My sister was hanging from the ceiling. And before I knew it, I was laughing. Okay. Yaginuma woke up and checked his watch. Probably only slept for a moment or so, and yet he'd still dreamed of that day. If even he was having that nightmare, then what of his sister who'd slept for all those years? Had Roshi in fact freed her from that hell by murdering her? Even if that were the case, there was no way in hell he'd thank the bastard for it. Not in a lifetime. He'll pay if it's the last thing I do. Though he'd allowed himself to be swindled by Oroshi's honeyed words, not once had he ever intended on leaving him alive. The two of them had agreed to meet here where they planned his escape, but in all honesty, Yaginuma doubted Orochi would keep his word. No, rather it was more likely that someone else entirely would track Yaginuma down to this place, and he had to ready himself for what needed to be done once they did. Yaginuma coiled his fingers around the lump of cold steel sitting on the floor of the dark room. Yeah. Oh, is Reiji gonna talk him down? If I can free him from his obsession, then maybe. Just maybe. I addressed Yaginuma as I kept a close eye on his right hand. Yaginuma feebly shook his head. Ozumi said that without a single hint of affectation.
所轄から始まったっていうのに警察庁に引き抜かれて大出世だ。こんなところで終わっちゃいけない人間なんですよ。貴様に何がわかる?
Yaginuma pointed his gun at Ozumi. Yaginuma! I smacked the left side of the gun with the heel of my palm. My hand was numb with heat. Regardless, I didn't dare let go of the scorching breech block. Ozumi slipped past me and pinned Yaginuma to the ground. I ejected the pistol's magazine and removed the bullet from the chamber. The bullet Yaginuma fired had bored itself into a nearby wall.
レイジよ、俺に当たったらどうするつもりだったんだ。当たらない方向に銃口を向かせたろう。94式は発射機構が側面にむき出しになっていたな。
I figured Yaginuma would hesitate to shoot again if I caused the gun to fire before he'd even pull the trigger. Not knowing if their own gun would actually fire tended to throw a lot of gunmen off their game. I gently placed a hand on Yaginuma's shoulder as he remained on the floor sobbing.
お前だけが悪いわけじゃないさ。
いや、僕が悪いんですよ。奴の還元に乗せられてしまったんですから。
仕方のないことさ。
I personally believe that most people would have done the exact same thing were they in his shoes, though I couldn't say for sure, of course.
病院を抜け出して一人で探そうとしたのも。
Yaginuma shook his head.
違いますよ。
聞かなかったことにしておきます。この拳銃についても。管理官。
Yaginuma rose to his feet at Ozumi's urging, the latter offering him a hand.
管理官はやめてくれ。僕にはもうその資格はないのだから。
But he swatted away Ozumi's hand and walked off by himself. Okay. Yeah, so I imagine our time skip's going to go a bit differently now, right? Because just the fact that Yaginuma is alive is a big thing. 1964. Two girls played in the park. They rode the swings together, competing to see who could go the highest. The chains creaked as they rocked back and forth. Eventually, one of the girls ended up swinging so fast that she got herself into a tizzy and stopped. The other girl laughed at that sight. It was the sort of scene one could find just about anywhere in the world. The pair got off the swings and ran to the nearby sandbox. A bucket covered in cloth was on the ground beside it. One of the girls put in the sandbox took two tiny cast iron discs out of it. They were spinning tops. One of the girls grabbed one and tied a string around it. Her awkward motions made it clear she'd never done anything like that before, that she was only repeating what she'd seen others do. Once finished, she flourished her arm and tried spinning the top. Naturally, however, she instead sent it flying off into next week. The other girl laughed at that sight. This sort of scene one could find just about anywhere in the world. Since neither one was good at tops, they tried playing marbles instead. Placed marbles on the remaining top one after another, tried flicking the others off. The girls screamed in joy each time they succeeded. However, it seemed they couldn't agree on the rules for taking the opponent's marbles, so they settled for just picking up their own and continuing from there. It was the sort of scene one could find just about anywhere in the world. Before anyone knew it, the sun was setting. The girls sat on a bench chatting, almost as though they'd completely forgotten that time waited for no man, woman, or child. It was only when they noticed it was getting dark that they stopped and got up. The girls strolled to the entrance of the park hand in hand. Once there, the two waved goodbye to each other and split up. However, one of the girls suddenly stopped and turned around shortly thereafter. She could see her friend's back. Said friend was talking to someone, an adult. The girl cocked her head. Is that her dad? But I don't recognize him. I don't know why. I feel like something bad's gonna happen. Oh? I left Section 1 and headed to a nearly identical office just a stone's throw away. There's Section 2 of the Criminal Investigations Division, centered on white-collar crimes. It was under the sign in the corner that I found the room labeled White-Collar Crimes Data Analysis that I found him.
Yo, genki ka?
Yaginuma? Yep.
先輩ですか。
Yaginuma sat down a stack of papers and looked up at me.
何の用ですか。
Yeesh, someone's cranky. Though Yaginuma hadn't been demoted for his failure in letting Orochi escape, no doubt thanks to me and Wozumi keeping our mouths shut, he'd still been reassigned to a different department. By now, he'd been reduced to little more than a pencil pusher organizing documents, one you would have never guessed almost stood atop of the MPA a few short years ago.
いやー、何あっちで新しい事件が発生。
僕には関係ありませんよ。
Yaginuma turned away like a pouty child and stuck a cig between his
天
lips.
罰の模倣犯が現れた。
Now that froze Yaginuma in his tracks before he could even light his cigarette.
今の僕に捜査権限はありませんから。
当時の捜査管理官としての話が聞きたい。
そんなの先輩の方が詳しいじゃないですか。
Yaginuma sighed with a puff of smoke.
とにかく今の僕は二課の人間です。強行犯捜査は関係ありませんよ。
ああ、そうかい。
I mean, yeah, I knew he couldn't have helped us even if he wanted to. Such were the confines of his current position. Still, it's frustrating to hear that from his own lips. Okay, so we get a little scene acknowledging that Yaginuma's still there. Another new scene. Stella's warm fingertips entwined around my cold fingers. Oh, are y'all gonna do the nasty? Jayla took her into my arms after seeing the passionate way she looked at me. Y'all gonna do the nasty? Oh, y'all gonna get nasty. Her steady and soothing heat warmed me to the core. Her long, beautiful golden locks caught my eyes. I gently wrapped them around my fingers and tousled her hair. Stella's lips curled into a hint of a smile. It was almost as if she was telling me she liked it when I played with her hair. Faint yet reliable moonlight shone in through a rift in the clouds and illuminated her hair. Her bleary blue eyes stared deep into the voids that were my pupils. Stella's tiny lips moved in concert with her whispers. Though I didn't hear her, I knew what she wanted. Penis. Her lips brushed against mine like a baby bird begging its mother for food. In all honesty, I couldn't remember when our relationship had gotten to this point. Maybe it had just been easy for her to worm her way into my heart as someone else who had sipped from the same chalice of suffering as me. Though I wouldn't go so far as to say I yearned for human touch, I didn't resist her either. Rather, I just let nature take its course and opened myself to her. I knew this relationship of ours wasn't permanent. We were merely doing this to fill the voids in our hearts, but I couldn't have cared less. Yeah, it hasn't stopped you in the past, bud. Stella's breath was the only sound echoing through this silent night. We locked lips for a while until we were reluctantly forced apart, both of us gasping for air. I played with her earlobe, causing her to wriggle and inflate her cheeks like an irritated child. She'd been the type to do that to express displeasure for as long as I'd known her. And the sight of her had saved my soul on many an occasion. She hadn't changed one bit. Years came and went, yet never did she lose her youthful innocence. I switched positions with her so I wouldn't crush her under my weight. We continued filling the voids in our hearts as we locked hands. Yeah, seems like that's not the only thing y'all were filling. It felt like we were melting into one. Like I was tasting the most succulent fruit there was. Stella had once told me that she didn't mind if I thought of her as her. Ew, that's weird. For she and her were very much alike. That's still weird. Those words had shone a ray of light on my empty heart. That's not helping, Reiji. Almost as if she was Beatrice guiding Dante through heaven. Beatrice? That's a totally different story, bud. Don't bring her into this. We nuzzled our wounded hearts against one another. Stella smiled when I parted my lips from hers and caressed her slender neck. I could hear her breath stirring into moans. Her sensual voice stirred my soul, and also my penis. My kisses trailed down her neck as I touched her delicates. In that instant, she jolted. It was already wet and ready. Stella gushed over and over each time I touched her. She did everything in her power to stifle her moans. What's more, she tightly gripped my sleeve as if to resist the onslaught of pleasure. I held her close to me. Her heat flooded into me from top to bottom. Yeah, I'm probably gonna cut that last bit out. It's not like so like graphic to where it's like you can't show anything like that, but like I'm not gonna run the risk with YouTube in that scene. It's one thing when they're like caressing each other and kissing and all that, but you know, once you cross that line, YouTube doesn't tend to like it very much. I gently caressed Stella's silky smooth hair as she curled up next to me. Her golden locks shifted each time she breathed in her sleep. They always served to remind me that she was completely different from her. Though that was only natural. No two people were ever the same, after all. No one could ever replace another. Which was exactly why we would become one, to give the other what they lacked, even if we were ultimately doing little more than drowning the sorrows of our souls. Okay. Another new scene? The girl shed tears as she woke up. The cold hit her like a wave the instant she opened her eyes. She quickly reeled in the blanket that was next to her. It had pebbles and sticks stuck to it, but fortunately it wasn't wet. The girl finally eased up when she was wrapped in the warmth of the blanket. A short while afterwards, her eyes adjusted to the darkness. White concrete walls surrounded her. They were tainted blackish, likely a consequence of the water leaking from the cracked segments. A wooden box rested on the floor. There also appeared to be shelves by the wall. The girl rose to her feet, still clutching the blanket. She looked up, only noticed something small dangling from the ceiling. Is that a light bulb? Oh, that must mean there's a light switch nearby. The girl reached out for the light bulb, and sure enough, her fingers brushed against something. This must be a cord. She tugged the cord with her index and middle fingers. The girl shut her eyes in the face of the sudden flash of blinding light. Slowly but surely, she opened them, taking care not to go too fast and disorient herself. Bookcases surrounded her. She found numerous old books stacked up in front of them. However, they didn't appear to follow any set theme. They seemed more like library books someone had grabbed off the shelf at random and thrown in piles. She picked a book off the floor and flipped through the pages. Unfortunately, the language within it was far too advanced for her years. The more she tried making sense of the text, the more her head hurt, and so she eventually gave up and literally shelved it. The only wall not adorned with a bookcase was in there, harbored a sturdy-looking door instead. The girl dashed over to it and turned the doorknob. However, the door refused to budge, as if something was blocking it. The girl twisted and turned the knob over and over, even resorting to pushing and pulling on the door, but nothing worked. Oh no. I'm locked in here? Despair struck her like a freight train the moment she came to that realization. Where am I? What am I doing here? Who took me to this place? Unfortunately, she couldn't remember any of that. The girl went over to the corner of the room where she'd left the blanket. She couldn't bring herself to turn off the lights. Instead, she simply curled up in her blanket. What am I supposed to do? Yeesh. Yikes. And another scene. This is gonna be more about the girl in the bunker. Well, if that music's anything to go by. The girl woke from her slumber. She had no idea what time it was. Regardless, she sat up, reached out, and pulled the light bulb cord. Orange light filled the room a moment later. The girl got out of bed. She then neatly folded her blanket, put on some shoes, and opened the door. Oh? Before her stood a giant space illuminated by a tiny light bulb. The ceiling was curved like a tunnel. A wooden table stood in the middle of the massive expanse. A bamboo basket tied to a string sat atop it. The girl strode up to the basket and reached into it. Within were cold bread rolls, hard as bricks. Tin thermoses were also there. The girl looked up to the ceiling. The other side of the string, the top of the ceiling, was a gaping round hole. It was too dark to see what lay on the other end. However, she knew the same basket came down every single day. The girl placed what she'd retrieved into a different basket before picking it up and walking away. Okay. Oh, new scene? It was totally dark by the next time I looked out the window. My body ached like hell from sitting in the same position for hours. We've gone through about half the stack by this point. No, I think I've seen this. It says I haven't seen this. Well, we started another stack of reports that fit our criteria. It still easily exceeded 100. Meanwhile, Ozmi and Ayumu were out busy with other duties. Furthermore, Toji had left a while back to deal with something else entirely, leaving me and Masaki alone to handle this.
そっちはどうだ
I called across the table to Masaki.
はい。何ですか？
Masaki abruptly raised his lowered
お
head.
前寝てただろ
いや、そんなことはない。
よだれを拭いてから言えで気になるものはあったのか
どうですかね。どれも気になるといえばそうなんですが。
Oh, you got a lead? Masaki flipped through his stack.
例えば、この子はどうですか？現場近くに住んでいたようですし。
I reviewed the report Masaki handed me.
どう思う
Masaki stared at me in confusion for a brief second before realizing my question had been directed behind him.
無関係の人間に聞かないでもらえますかね。
Oh yeah, cause Yaginuma's here now. Gotta get his opinion.
八木沼さん？どうしてここに？
暇なんだろ
Oh Jesus. Yaginuma scowled in the face of my rapid-fire quips.
客人を案内してきただけですよ。暇ですからね。
He turned around once he was done retorting. A visitor? Who's he talking about?
いやあ、しばらくぶり。
Yeah! Let's fucking go! Long time no see, sweet cheeks.
綿貫先生。
Masaki reacted to her quicker than me. Though I was only obvious in hindsight since he'd been her patient and
お
all.
久しぶりです
肌の手入れは欠かしたことがないからね。君らは少し
Get their asses.
そりゃこちらもいい年ですからね
I shrugged.
何の用ですか
You wanted to smooch me, don't you? She probably had business with Section 1, seeing as Yaginuma had officially escorted her and all.
いや何6年前と同じような事件が起こったと聞いてね。どうせ君らが関わっているだろうと思ってきて。
Kaede chuckled.
何かいい知恵でも拝借願えませんか
新聞記事程度のことしか知らない私に何をしろというのだ。
犯人像でも推測してもらえませんかね
Kaede brought a finger to her chin in contemplation.
もちろんただの推測でしかないのだが、いわゆる変質者による犯行の可能性というのは排除してもいいと思う。
Oh, ma'am, speculate.
考えなくてもいいん
Go
ですか？
off. Speculate all over me. What?
被害者の年齢などを鑑みると性的盗作者の犯行とも考えられるが、生き方法があれだったのだろう。
なぜあのようにしたのかはまだわかりませんがね
おそらくは極めて正常な人間ではないかな。
そうなると被疑者を絞り込むのは難しいですね。
まだ犯人の影も形も見えないんだ
Regardless, we had to catch them before the body count piled up.
それにしても行方不明者が多いですね。
Yaginuma regarded the stacks of reports on the table.
それでも該当しそうにないものは外してもらったんだがね
二課の仕事で詐欺集団の調査をすると多いんですよ。家出した少年が使われていることが。
生きるのには金が必要だからな小遣いをくれるとなれば多少の危険は気にしなくなる
And unfortunately, the immoral took advantage of that need.
そういった集団が関与していることは考
ないな
ないの。
えあるわけないだろう。
Fuck you, Masaki. The three of us shot down Masaki's suggestion one after another.
いや、そこまで否定しなくてもいいじゃないですか。
そういう組織がこれ見よがしに死体を加工するなんてことはありえないよ。
無論見せしめなどの理由があれば別だが。
ま、そういうことだこの行方不明者の中にはそういうところに囚われているのもいるかもしれないが
I wish we could help them too, if
今
possible.
は目の前の事件に集中すべきだな
そうですね。
Hell yeah. Got to see Kaede in the fucking time skip. We love to see it. Love to see it. Oh ho. So this is when we're investigating that apartment that they said someone shady lived at, but we arrived and it's completely empty. But now we're investigating the floorboards, and
あれ
Masuki made a surprise sound after lifting one up.
どうした？
誰か鍵を落としませんでしたか？
Picked a small key off the floor. So how did no one notice a small key prior? In the last run.
鍵？
Checked my pockets, but my house and car keys were all present and accounted for.
私のではありません。元から部屋にあったのでは？
そうかもしれませんが、さっき畳を剥がした時はありませんでした。
Oh.
畳の縁に張り付いていたのかもしれんな。
Oh, I see.
見せてくれ。
Masuki nodded and handed me the key. It was small and
駅
flimsy.
にあるロッカーの鍵のようだな。
どこのものかわかるか？
見ただけでわかるはずがないだろう。
Yes. Doji took the key and threw it back to Masuki just as he was finishing putting a tatami back in place.
何ですか？
ま、調べればどこのものかはわかるだろうさ。
それじゃよろしく頼む。
Then please dig, ma'am. Give the tatami mats another check, found nothing else of note. Okay, I believe that's all that's gonna be here.
どう思う？
先ほど見つけた鍵はどうしますか？関係ないのであれば調べる意味もなくなりますが。
Except if it's Naori, that's true.
ここまで徹底的に片付けられた部屋で鍵だ。
一応調べてみるか。
そうだな。まさきを連れて行ってくれ。
では私は退去した住人の身元を調べてみます。
なあ、よろしく頼む。鍵について何か分かったか？
知り合いの錠前師に形状と番号を伝えておいた。
Guess we'll just have to wait on him then.
捜査本部の方から何か連絡を。
今のところありません。
So they have any more luck than us, huh?
私はそろそろ本部に戻らなくてはなりませんが。ねえ、レイジ。
Oh, Stella has something to say?
どうした？まだ残ってるぞ。
Stella's cheeks inflated out as soon as I asked that question. Yeah, she was just kidding. She hastily resumed eating, her cheeks still bloated like a pufferfish.
たら、ご飯粒ついてるぞ。
Carefully poked my own cheek in demonstration. Stella suddenly leaned forward and turned her cheek to me. Oh, for the love of...
自分で取れよ。
Regardless of my complaints, though, I snatched off the grain of rice anyway. Ow.
おい。
It was the first time she'd nibbled me, but she seemed kind of peeved this time around. It's because of my joke, or whatever I kept her from saying, maybe. If that's the case, I don't see why she can't just tell me now. Stella rose to her feet when she was done.
お皿洗う。
そのままでも構わないぞ。
いい、洗う。
Cranky Stella snatched my tableware and marched off to the kitchen in a huff. Oh, brother. I'd apologize when she got back. However, I had a feeling this was about more than my stupid joke. Meaning I really had to think about what was bugging her and find the right words to apologize.
終わった。
Well, so much for that.
いや、洗い物をするにはいくらなんでも早すぎるだろう。
お水につけてるだけ。そうしないと汚れは落ちにくくなるから。
それは知ってるんだが。
Suddenly Stella sat on my lap for some reason. Is she serious right now?
ステラさん。
Stella? The fuck? I addressed her in the gentlest voice I could conjure. Think I don't get the hint that you're in a bad mood? Still, I just couldn't put my finger on what was bugging her.
墓参り行きたくないのは分かってる。
Stella suddenly eased up.
誠も捕まってないし、踏ん切りがつかない？
かもしれない。
I slung an arm around Stella.
まだトーコに報告できることが何もないからな。この6年、全く手がかりもなくて。
それでも、
Stella ruffled my
それ
hair.
でも、トウコは会いたがってる。
今の仕事に一区切りがついたら。
I took Stella's hand in my own. Stella nodded before gingerly closing her eyes. Up. New bunker scene. New bunker scene. The girl spent some time after waking up wondering why she was in this place. However, her brain refused to cooperate with her. She knew she wasn't home. A small light bulb illuminating the room from the ceiling told her as much. This is a storeroom or something? It was then that the girl noticed she was wrapped in a blanket. Though it was raggedy and dirty, she feared she'd freeze without it. That was just how cold the room was. The girl carefully got off the sofa she'd found herself resting atop. There was a door to the side. However, it didn't budge even after she jiggled the doorknob. It seemed the room was locked from the outside. I'm stuck in here. That was the only conclusion the girl could reach. She went back to the sofa and had a seat, wrapping her arms around her knees. The fact that she was locked in meant someone must have brought her here. However, she had no idea who that was. What was I doing before all this? Fortunately, her brain was smothered by a fog that kept her from remembering exactly. Still, she understood that there was nothing she could do as long as there was no way out of this room. The girl curled up under the blanket and lay down. A moment later, she surveyed the room. The floor was littered with junk of some sort. Furthermore, there were rusty machines that she didn't recognize, not to mention rusty metal plates. She also found a box housing broken glass bottles and crushed cans. The brick walls were stained dark all over from leaking water. Perhaps that was why the room felt so cold. That, or maybe the bare dirt ground kept the place from retaining heat. After all, the only wooden part of the floor was a board in the corner. The girl wondered why that was when suddenly the board rose from below. A pale hand emerged from it. Ugh. Followed by the face of a girl around her age. Ugh. What? Ugh, that's scary as fuck. There's just a random board in the floor, and then fucking a girl your age starts crawling out of that shit. Oh, wow. That terrified the fuck out of me, dude. Fuck. This went from murder mystery to horror story real fucking quick. Oh my god. It's one thing that they're all like locked up in separate rooms and whatnot in this underground bunker, but then like you got ones crawling out of the fucking floor? Ah. Fuck. Don't do that, man. Scare the fuck out of me. It was just past noon. Masuke disembarked at Ueno Station for the first time in a long while. Waited outside the ticket gate until he saw Toji making her way over.
悪いな、わざわざ。
いえ、問題ありませんよ。鍵のことはど
Oh,
うですか
right, the key.
錠前師から連絡が来た。が、どこにあるものかまでは分からなかったそう。
あ、そんな。それじゃあこれからロッカーをしらみつぶしに当たるってこと。
いや、それには及ばない。どこにあるかは分からないだけで。
はあ。
Since Masuke had no idea where Toji was going with this, all he could do was nod.
銀行などにある貸金庫の鍵だそうだ。防犯がしっかりしているせいで、市政の人間にまで情報がなかなか降りてこないらしい。
調布の銀行じゃないですか。あの部屋からも近いですし。
その可能性は高い。
But suddenly Toji shrugged.
鍵があるからといって簡単に通させてもらえないのが銀行の貸金庫というわけだ。
そりゃそうですよね。
I mean, they'd probably need to pass an identity check and receive the client's authorization to get to it.
この先は奴のところに行って調べなければならないだろうな。
やつ
Wait, him?
というわけで、協力してもらいたいんですが。
Yaginuma looked up from the documents he'd finished organizing over in his corner of Section 2 upon Masuke concluding his appeal.
経緯がよくわからんのだが。
The former superintendent sighed in exasperation and looked over at Toji.
遺体発見と前後して引っ越している男の部屋から見つかった鍵がどこのものか調べてほしい。
僕が付き合う義理はないと思いますがね。
He said that, yet Yaginuma rose from his chair all the same.
銀行の貸金庫ですか。調布に支店がある地方銀行か信用金庫。
Yaginuma produced some documents and a map.
調布駅前に新金があるな。貸金庫もあるようだ。
では捜査令状の請求を頼む。無理やり押し入るわけにもいかない。
出せるはずがないでしょ。その部屋の人物が誰なのかもわかりませんし。
Yaginuma rolled his eyes, almost like an elementary school teacher on a bad day, having to explain something patently obvious to a child.
そこを何とかするのが柳沼良一という男だろう。
無茶を言わないでください。ん？ 鍵を手に入れたということは家宅捜索も行ったんですか？
きちんと佐藤さんは言いましたよ。
始末書者ですね。まあ責任は監督している魚住にあるか。
Agnuma snorted.
わかりましたよ。どうせ暇ですからね。
According to someone, I got nothing better to do, fucker. Agnuma procured a document and started writing something down.
何が出てくるんでしょう。
Asuki turned to Toji.
さあな、あの部屋にいた人物が何者なのかもわからんからな。
何でもない可能性だってあるわけですよね。
そうだとしたら無駄足を踏ませた罪は重いからな。
Agnuma slid the document into an envelope before rising to his feet.
では行くか。
Masuki and Toji waited in a car next to the police box outside Chofu Station until a gloved Agnuma emerged from a nearby credit union.
やはりここだったようだ。田中一郎などとふざけた名前だったかな。
池田信介ではなかったのか。
どちらも偽名でしょうよ。池田も信介も元総理大臣の名前です。
ああ、なるほどな。田中一郎も似たようなものか。
何がありましたか？
あったも何も。
Agnuma procured an envelope out of his bag.
お前宛てだ。
Oh.
え？
Agnuma paid no heed to Masuki's shock and procured a letter from the envelope.
正確にはひながみあやと宛てだ。この意味がわかるか？
なおちゃん。
Oh. I mean, that's who we thought it was in the first place. I'm sitting here like that's a shocking revelation. We thought it was Naori in the first place. Masuki's eyes widened.
だろうな。ちなみに文面はこうだ。もう二度と会えないかもしれない友へ。俺は自分の天国を見つけに行く。
The elbow eliminated any doubt that this could have been from anyone but Naori Kuroya.
あの部屋に潜伏していたということか。
これは思わぬ収穫ですよ。まあ、総一から離れた僕には関係のない話ですが。
それでも自分が捜査の指揮を取っていたやつだ。考えもひとしおだろ。
Toji regarded Masuki's pallid visage.
いや、
He could barely even speak. Though he knew this was a time where he had to say something, his mind had burst into static due to this unexpected turn of events.
ところで、これは本当に黒谷直りの筆跡なのか？
Agnuma showed Masuki the letter and questioned him as though he were a suspect on the wrong end of the interrogation room.
それはわかりません。
That was the most readily available writing sample of Naori's they had, after all.
ではお前、ひながみあやとにこの書き置きを残した理由は何だ？
それこそわかりませんよ。
Masuki could only shake his head. It's probably coded in some fashion. Perhaps this is his way of saying farewell. I don't think that's the case. I think it's coded in some
これ
fashion.
が暗号だとしたら、お前にだけは解けるとも考えられるな。
天国を見つけに行くか。確かに
Yeah.
何か別の意味を含んでいそうだが。
So they said, but absolutely nothing came to Masuki's mind.
他には何かなかったんですか？
Agnuma silently tossed Masuki a thick
原
envelope.
稿用紙。
Masuki regarded the papers within in utter bewilderment.
また何とかの羊が出てきたらどうしてくれようかと思ったが、どうやら別物のようだ。
新作か？
Toji looked over the envelope.
エデンの少女と書かれていますね。
Oh. The story's title was written in handwriting that appeared to be a match for the letters.
エデン。楽園か。確か前のプルガトリオが煉獄だったな。
今回のものもマミやシンジの模倣か？
わかりませんよ。少なくとも読まなければ。
では警視庁に戻るまでに読んでくれ。
Agnuma headed for the car.
車の中でですか？
僕が運転してやると言うんだ。
はあ。
Masuki took the envelope and got in the back seat, all the while hoping he didn't get car sick as he was reading.